Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member, and Secretary Azar. My Democrat colleagues take numbers out of context to blame President Trump for every death from COVID-19. They cite that there have been over 7 million positive cases in the U.S., and what they fail to mention is that the United States is one of the world's leaders in testing. We test more per capita than major countries like the U.K., Australia, Germany, Canada, South Korea, Italy, and many others. And that's according to factcheck.org. According to Johns Hopkins, our daily percentage of positive tests is also very low at 4.68%. In comparison, India is at 7.2%. France is over 14%. Mexico is over 54%. Last month, the Wall Street Journal noted COVID-19 death rates in America had been on the decline. In April, the United States briefly peaked at 5.46 deaths per million. But for the past month, the United States has remained below 3 deaths per million. In spite of the vast increase in testing, Mexico, the UK, France, Spain, and Indonesia and others have higher case fatality rates than the U.S., but the left says just the opposite. The left manipulates numbers of a global pandemic and makes every death and every diagnosis the responsibility of the president. That is despicable. We continue to learn new information daily and constantly change previous assumptions about this new pathogen. I'm following the medical literature constantly, and it is changing over time. The left's mantra, though, is the same. Oh, there's no plan. Despite multiple plans like Operation Airbridge and Warp Speed, to say there's no plan, that's just deception. They may not like the plan, but if you say there's no plan, that's not true. The administration's swift response prevented the rest of this country from facing the fate like the early days in New York City. And they blamed COVID-19. What they really failed to do is blame the CCP. I mean, they're the ones that lied about the virus, botched the response, hoarded PPE, and silenced whistleblowers. If China had acted 2 weeks earlier, according to a study by Columbia University, we cited it before, 84% of deaths in the United States could have been prevented. Now the total number of American deaths is over 207,000. If China had been transparent and we had been warned earlier, 173,000 Americans would be alive. Yet Democrats like our former Vice President Biden, called President Trump's China travel ban xenophobic. I mean, that's crazy. Even Democrat governors refuse to accept the facts. I mean, I understand the previous comments, but Governor Cuomo refused to close down New York even after President Trump said we needed to. Recently, he even had the gall to cast doubt on the efficacy of the vaccine. He said, and I quote, "The first question is the vaccine safe? Frankly, I'm not going to trust the federal government's opinion." He then added, quote, "New York State will have its own review when the federal government has finished with their review." I don't believe New York has that capacity. Rather than trusting the nonpartisan experts at the NIH, CDC, and FDA, he's putting politics before science. He said he will not recommend New Yorkers get vaccinated until his team conducts a second review. That's going to lead to people dying. It's despicable. The fact is, he's lost all credibility. A Columbia University study also found that if New York had shut down 2 weeks earlier, 20,000 people would be alive. Dr. Thomas Frieden said, he was the former commissioner of New York City's health department, head of the CDC, told the New York Times that New York City's death toll could have been reduced by 50 to 80% had social distance measures been in place a week or two earlier. Trump even had to threaten a quarantine of New York. Remember that? Everybody seems to have forgotten that. And because Cuomo so badly botched the response. Additionally, his idiotic order to send COVID-positive patients back to the nursing home against CMS guidance likely contributed to thousands of elderly deaths in New York State. My fellow GOP colleagues and I have requested that this subcommittee investigate that. Unfortunately, no answer. They don't want to hold their fellow Democrats accountable. They don't even want to hold the Chinese Communist Party accountable. They're more interested in smearing President Trump in a desperate attempt to win back the White House. That's despicable. Since their radical leftist base has embraced socialism and communism, we can no longer expect Democrats to push back on China. They will continue to prioritize politics over people, over good oversight, and the lives of the American people. I yield.